Welcome everyone to another video with the same audio setting from the previous one. So let's just call this another Hear Me Out video. That's right, I'm not super happy with my audio setup, but hear me out. Hear me out about what I am about to say about these two characters, Thancred and Vanera. Ready? Here's the point. I think that Thancred is actually just way better than Vanera. And it's funny that these two characters have come out in the same film. Why? Well, mainly because I think that Vanera's performance so far has been fairly whelming. Now, when I say that, a lot of people say a character is underwhelming, and a lot of people say that a character is whelming. There have been times where I say a character is great, good, or bad, or somewhat of a disappointment. But honestly, to me, this is a character who is straight up just whelming right now. I don't really know if we're going to get more whelmed or less whelmed in the future, because like watching a bunch of content with her, dodge is still very strong, and when the other team is not ready for it, it hits them like a freight train, their teams die, and dodge is successful. That feels very much true still. However, as I've seen a lot with certain team setups, like old team setups and some new team setups, this with combination with Riku is just not really that impressive. I would say that it's running about a 50% win rate between a bunch of different teams. And if the team is fairly accurate, then the odds of success are just particularly bad. I find this really interesting to talk about because, for a new character like this, I was kind of expecting her to be along the same lines of Riku. Riku is considered to be a top tier character on JP, but that hasn't been the case with Vanera. Vanera has come out and she's just rated below Riku. And I don't think that it's because she's really that much worse. Although, Riku kind of fits a little bit better. When you combine the two, their overall win percentage feels worse than what Riku was doing with other teams, which also isn't super encouraging. And we've seen recently that Yuna is a character that is essentially dominating a lot of the top right now of JP, where like the guilds have basically uniformly decided that it's Yuna plus two other characters. I haven't heard anything since then. I'm assuming that everybody's still pretty well stalemated now that Yuna supremacy has been decided. But that other point that first point that I want to talk about, that Thancred is actually better. If you look at Thancred is a character that you get from logins, that you get from resources that you can acquire in games. Like, hey, right now, I'm proving also in this video that the tickets that you get from this event, that Thancred is just not likely to drop. Thankfully, you can get 250 from here, and you get a bunch from login, and you get some orbs here. Like I already have 302, but you can get way more just from playing, and that's great news. But like Thankred is very easy to obtain and level up. He has gotten a bunch of upgrades, and interestingly, Thankred is kind of the answer to a bunch of evadey stuff. Now, I'm not saying that Thancred is like, oh my god, he's god tier. Oh man, I'm just not getting any luck with these. I'm not saying that Thancred is god tier anywhere near what Orlando was, but he does feel a little bit similar towards Agrius, and then also not as quite as successful as Agrius. But if you look at the JP arena right now, so many teams are running these evadey things, and Thancred actually is pretty resilient to damage. And if an evade team goes up against him, they're not necessarily favored to win. And this is a team that you have spent a good amount of resources on lately. I mean, you need to get the Riku card, you need to get Riku, you need to get them maxed, and then you also potentially get Vinera too, only to find out that this free-to-play Thankred, when he's just a 140 and way easier to max out without maxing out a credit card. Well, to me, that speaks worlds that from the most latest update here on JP, that if I was to recommend something, it would be Thankred, and it would be Thankred by a lot. Like, it's not even just the cost factor, but the cost factor is always the thing in God. Like, if you look at it, like, it's what? It's a tenth of the price of a PS5 Pro, or essentially, you know, the price of a Switch for one of these characters, right? I mean, if you get a Switch Lite, sure. Okay, I'm beating around. It's also about the fact that Thancred is just kind of outperforming the evade characters, which so many people have put so many resources into. A teammate of mine who focuses in our guild on light-based characters, he more recently did his own team, which I'm going to show on here. I'm going to unabashedly take this. And this is the team that he is running right now. And yes, Yuna is a premium character, absolutely. But you look at the setup, there really isn't anything that's that unreasonable to get. Okay, Bahamut's, sure, but they're permanently in. Light Veritas is a character that everybody can earn. Thancred is another character that everybody can earn. The equipment that he is running, almost nothing here is really that special. I think there's one Trust Mastery that I see that is maybe a little bit replaceable. I believe that's the Ashing Ketone Trust Mastery on Thankred to boost speed. But overall, this build is really, really solid for him. He's saying, well, Thankred has 30% elemental resistance across the board. With his buff, his type resistance is 37, 20, 37, 50, and 4, with magic being potentially the weakest. And just that he was regretting not saving up for the newest VC, which would have been a boon to this team rather than a burden. And I believe that he is referring to the YRP vision card, because that's it could also be the Jaden vision card, but it's definitely one of those two, because both of them support this team. Like it's just this thing where right now Vanera doesn't feel like she has a good home, a home that's taking the most advantage of her. Like, she's an anti-sure hit unit. She will eventually find a place where but Thancred is actually what I kind of predicted that he would be, a discount version of AC Cloud that everybody can get, max, and boost really, really easily. And it works quite well, is the ultimate point, I think, of this video. But this is the kind of hear me out part where everybody thinks, oh, well, I mean, long run, yeah, Vanera will be better. But that's not necessarily true. I actually do think that there's been a little bit more replaceability with characters lately. Like, they don't stay in the meta maybe quite as long, or there's something that knocks them out of the meta and then maybe something that brings them back later, a la AC Cloud. But yeah, like, people always wonder, like, what do you recommend? What do you recommend? Well, it's going to be Thancred this time. Thancred is, in my opinion, way better. And it's not just the cost thing. It is actually his performance right now on VP. With the number of people who have put so many resources into evade, Thancred actually can endure the storm of evade characters, let some really hyper accurate characters be behind him, or potentially, switch out Light Veritas with excuse me, a healer, and you do really way better than you would expect. And yes, Yuna is almost certainly a blessing when it comes to, so that's okay. In the same way that you could say, well, Lightning has good characters too right now, or Earth has good characters too right now. It's impressive that Light is kind of just a really solid element after, you know, maybe it feeling a little shaky without the dark element. It's kind of starting to shine. There's a pun. So that is my Hear Me Out. Thancred is, in my opinion, categorically better than Vanera right now. And if we're counting wins this year from things that the developers have done, the tactics was definitely a win for the players, and this feels like it will be. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and that new microphone is coming eventually. Later.